after the elections there. The findings by the South African development community that those polls were not free and fair. The President, Emmerson Mnangagwa, this week appointed both his son and his nephew to cabinet. His son is now the Deputy Minister of Finance. His nephew is the Deputy Minister of Tourism. The obvious question is, what does the future now hold for Zimbabwe? Dr Alexander Rusero is a political analyst there. Dr Rusero, good afternoon to you. What can we read into this decision by President Mnangagwa to appoint two members of his own family to his cabinet? What does it tell us?
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon. Yeah, I don't think it gives a good posture of President Mnangagwa post-2023 election, which he has emerged with a dent. So it puts to rest any forms of doubt because they have stopped any form of pretense in as much as demonstrating who is in charge is concerned. So there's been a joke circulating in Zimbabwe that when the president was when he postulated or coined a slogan, Nyika inovakwa nevayo, a country is constructed by its owners. He could have been making reference to his children, which in Shona are Vana. So, of course, these two close relatives to Mnangagwa, they are not cabinet ministers. They are deputies, but they remain powerful. Because in terms of the cosmologies of governance architecture, you do not need to appoint your relatives in certain positions of decision-making in the very same executive that you are in charge. It becomes very problematic in terms of checks and balances, and in terms where by some occurrence or incidents, these people become embroiled in certain corruption scandals, because they are also human beings. It is enough and sufficient to have your father as a president. That's enough blessing. So in governance context, the moment you have your son serving under you in the executive and your nephew serving under you, yeah, in terms of governance posture, especially in the current context where the elections are disputed, it speaks volumes to traits of cronyism, traits of neo-patrimonialism that are slowly creeping in the Mnangagwa-led government.
The rest of his cabinet, what can we see from the people he has appointed? I mean, are there ZANU-PF factions that he needs to manage quite carefully?
Yeah, the cabinet is a result of what was available. There is really nothing inspiring or surprising because the cabinet is a selection from the pool of what was available in terms of the members of parliament who were vying under the ZANU-PF ticket. So there has been much of continuity as opposed to change, because the president has retained 18 who served in the previous admin, and only there has been an addition of 8. And more worrying is the fact that it's now a bloated cabinet that has been extended from 22 to 26. So big governments are wasteful, and Zimbabwe is not in need of a 26-member cabinet that will take a toll on the public purse and the taxpayers' money. Because at the end of the day, you know, these posts, they also come with their perks, their Mercedes-Benz, some executive aides, etc., which is not giving a good posture of seriousness in as much as issues to do with harnessing the limited resources that we have is concerned. So there is nothing much about that cabinet, especially with regards to competencies, with regards to technocracies. There is hardly any convincing figure in that cabinet where you can say at least the background of this person speaks volumes to a deserving appointment. Serve for a few, between 1 and 3 people. Otherwise, the rest, it's just a matter of your proximity to power. There seem not to have been any logic pertaining certain appointments, and lots of them, they actually leave a lot to be desired, especially given the fact that President Mnangagwa last year released a score sheet, a scorecard of the performance of his cabinet ministers, and even those who scored the least, who scored close to zero, they are still being retained, which defies the logic of why he designed such monitoring and evaluation performance criteria of his ministers when he simply knew he could decide, maybe from gut feeling, whom he wants to serve under him and whom he doesn't want to do the same.
Sure. Before the election, there was a bit of analysis. I think it was Dr. William Mpofu, if I remember correctly, who suggested that all the conditions for another coup were now present in Zimbabwe. And he's talking specifically about what's happening in the military. So, I mean, I presume in some ways you know more than me, sir, so you can correct me. The military and ZANU are kind of the same thing. Do you think that could still happen? Is that a concern?
Yeah, it all depends. The moment we start making reference to issues of the coup, etc., it all depends on whether we are saying the military or the security sector is at the peripheries of the governance matrix and the power matrix in both ZANU-PF and in Zimbabwe. I think the opposite is true, because in 2017, had it not been the military, Mugabe would still be around. I don't think that kind of arrangement has changed much. I don't think so. So, to really say there is a possibility of another coup, I think would be some dangerous pessimism, because the military, I think, is also pretty much in charge in Zimbabwe, and they can't coup against themselves, so to speak, because the post-2017 arrangement has not really changed in terms of who wields power between the security sector and ZANU-PF as a party. I think 2017 reminded us where ZANU-PF power resides. It resides somewhere elsewhere, and which is not necessarily within ZANU-PF itself. So for as long as that kind of balance of political forces are maintained in that way, I do not foresee any form of a military intervention or military coup. From my own perspective, that is far-fetched, because I pretty much believe that the military is in charge. The security sector in Zimbabwe is in charge.
Dr. Alexander Rusero, thank you, political analyst in Zimbabwe. More